Okay. Okay. Well, it's a live show. It's great to see you, Ali. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Matt.
Yeah. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
You've just returned. Yeah, no, absolutely. You've just returned from some holidays, which is great to hear.
Hopefully, we all did.
Absolutely. So, by way of brief intro, my guest today, Dr. Ali Tinazli, is the Chief Executive Officer at Lifespin. Is also an investor and board member at another few organizations that I'll let you detail in just a second. It's really great to have you on board here on the podcast. We've been speaking for, I think, 6 to 8 months now, on and off, to get to know you and your company. And I've been following your really exciting journey as you've been traveling the globe, talking about Lifespin and getting it off the ground, really. So perhaps it may be good to just hear from you about your introduction into Lifespin and the other organizations that you've been a part of.
Yeah, sounds great. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Thanks, Matt. And perhaps I'll start with my passion. What drives me actually is the interface of technology, high technology, and healthcare. This has been my passion since my studies. So my background is biochemistry, then followed by PhD in single molecule biophysics. And then I really got excited by the combination of high technologies and the applications in life sciences and healthcare. And with that, after my PhD, I joined Applied Biosystems, which is now Thermo Fisher. I was in corporate development, was in tech scouting, which is great fun after a PhD to do tech scouting for a major company. And then I joined Sony. This was back in 2008. And together with 7 other colleagues at Sony, we built a new business based on microfluidics technologies, consumables in healthcare. And so we worked with many companies, small and large. We worked with major pharma companies, with early startups, and this was great exposure. We could grow the business from 8 employees to 120. During that time, I moved from Germany to the US and further expanded the business. Then I got a call from HP. And with that, then a few weeks later, basically, I joined HP in order to lead the global healthcare strategy out of the headquarters in Palo Alto, California, which was basically the continuation of what I started, because it's always my theme is always technology convergence. How can I combine technologies from the consumer space or digital space with something useful in medicine, useful in healthcare? And at HP, it was about basically how can I combine microfluidics technologies with digital technologies and use these in healthcare. And as you may know, HP is the world's largest microfluidics company. Almost all of us may have an inkjet printer from HP. If not,
I have one upstairs. Yeah.
And this was a great time. I got then finally the board approval at HP to enter healthcare. And so then I decided, but then I decided to leave, because to me, it's really hunting for new challenges. So I could check the box. And then I was also curious about the startup world. So basically, I spent my first 10, 12 years in 1,400 companies, like Sony, HP, and Thermo Fisher, of course. And then I was curious about how could I use my skill sets, which I got in the startup world. And it was timely because I met John too, the co-founder of Kingston Technologies. He has a very exciting company in this portfolio, which is called Fluxergy, based in Southern California, Irvine. And so I joined Fluxergy as Chief Commercial Officer back in 2019, basically before the pandemic started. And then at Fluxergy, I could benefit from my experience at HP of really putting a well-structured commercial roadmap for commercialization of the different products prototypes we have in our pipeline. But then we got the pandemic, obviously, and then still we kept working on the pandemic-related questions like COVID-19 testing. And then we have been successful in getting the first regulated product of Fluxology out under CE-IVD in the European and Middle Eastern markets. And this was a great experience, basically, how to move a company into this type of commercial stage. And then I got an interesting introduction through HP, actually, into Lifespin. So Lifespin was an exciting stage of really tipping point, because companies start in stealth mode. First, it's always about the technology and the R&D, and then it gets to a stage where you may need a new CEO with a new mindset, basically, to then take the technology into the market and to further grow the company. And what excited me about Lifespin is following. Like when you look into basically the question about understanding human health, like what is healthy, what is not healthy, also speaking about mental health, another big time neglected topic in healthcare, I think, on the clinical side, on the diagnostic side. And what I saw and what I've seen at Lifespin was the opportunity with a new proprietary technology, which is based on nuclear magnetic resonance, to get snapshots, real-time snapshots of someone's well-being. And so you could imagine this as following. We all know MRT, and MRT is good for imaging organs. It's good for, let's say diagnosing malign structures in tissues. And there's a technology-related method in clinical chemistry called nuclear magnetic resonance, NMR. Most people may have heard it in the context of structural biology or let's say chemical analysis labs, but it has never been really deployed in a systematic fashion in clinical diagnostics. So it's a new emerging trend. You see also a number of increasing papers on that. But then what I've seen was following. I've seen that with one NMR scan, which takes about 5 minutes, you can get hundreds of analytes from 0.5 milliliter of blood sample. And that's really exciting because you get quantitative information. So it's not only about, just like in mass spec, oh, I see metabolites or analytes A, B, C, D. We can see A, B, C, D, but we can also tell you how much it is. So we can do it quantitatively. But now the most important point, it's cost effective because you can get everything right. And so what kind of strikes me about precision medicine is when I go to the conferences, all these fancy technologies are typically very expensive. And that means the motivation on the healthcare provider side and the payer side to use these technologies early on is very low, because who should pay for that? And what we are working on are basically precision medicine tools for screening of neurological diseases, and also for screening of cancer diseases. So we just closed actually an agreement with the Biobank in Graz. So we will have access to more than 25,000 longitudinal cancer samples, which will help us to develop a yes/no cancer screen. And what's really exciting now is that this powerful technology is very cost effective at full scale. So it's scalable. That means it could qualify also for prescription in a primary care physician office. And that's the important point, because the economics is completely different than, let's say, standard liquid biopsy, where you end up paying typically thousands or hundreds of dollars. We need to be 10x below that. And if we can do that, and technically we can do it, it's more a matter of getting it into the healthcare systems over time. Then you give a powerful tool into the hands of physicians to do just similar to an annual body check, but here much more holistic, much more comprehensive, a body check for different types of diseases. Now, these are bold claims. We have more than 25 clinical cooperations going on. We are preparing now quite a few papers to be submitted, and we just actually also submitted our platform patent, which is a quite comprehensive patent. So Wilson Sonsini is our law firm for that, and the reason is you need really cutting edge or bleeding edge IP firms to really understand and then put this into a patent. So because what we have is at the intersection of classical in vitro diagnostics and data science. And the business model is software as a service. And in order to triangulate these 3 key points, you need to be really very deep in all these fields to have really a strong asset which you can protect. And that's what we are doing basically. And now, in terms of outlook, we are now further maturing our clinical studies towards commercial products. We have also very exciting product opportunities in the non-regulated space. Actually, in a couple of days, next week, we will start our pharma and biobank services business, where we will be offering our technology to the pharmaceutical industry. And then we'll take it from there. And then obviously, the holy grail is always to get comprehensive health screens, but taking the complexity into account and then what it takes to get this to market. This will take a few years' time, but the foundation we have is very strong.
Fabulous, wonderful. So what's been the best avenue to market for you so far, Ali, as well, given that you're looking at so many areas of the industry?
Yes, and the focus is key. And so basically, at HP, I learned the discipline about differentiating between platform technology as a horizontal and then how to basically create value in the specific verticals. And so basically, it's really about, first of all, to understand the platform, to make it also understandable to the industry, and then to identify in a modular fashion the verticals, right? How can I exploit it? And based on the vertical, I have to choose my go-to-market partners and the market channels. And so first of all, I think it's important to show strong alliances with the pharmaceutical industry. So with that, we'll be launching our pharma services business next week after Labor Day, and then we'll proactively basically also seek out for partnerships in the pharma industry, which can be manufacturing pharma industry for more basic questions like, let's say, QC, QM, but also QC of natural products, of basically natural compounds. That's a quite big topic, actually. Also, when you think of the, let's say, different types of new emerging herbal treatment industry, standardization, quality management is very important. Now you can say they have already quality management, but then I would say HPLC takes 2 days and it's very expensive and not really scalable.
Yeah.
Our method takes 10 minutes and it's very scalable.
Yeah, wonderful. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and so with that, basically entering pharma partnerships with different partners of different sizes will be, I think, a great stepping stone into the healthcare industry in general, but first starting in the non-regulated space, and then followed by specific use cases in the diagnostic setting.
It's really interesting, and your expertise from HP and Sony and getting technology in the hands of the consumer as well through healthcare has been probably pivotal to the evolution of Lifespin and where it's going next. Yeah,
well, ideally, I mean, you want to have enabled consumers, empowered consumers to understand the health. For example, when I get an MRT scan today, it's kind of a hassle to get it ultimately on your phone, like the results. It's getting better, and I'm always challenging my providers to give me the results in an electronic format that I can carry it with me on my phone.
Yes.
But ultimately, you want to really go into a scenario where you have full access to your health data, where you can also, in an affordable fashion, can create or generate new real-time insights about yourself. Because right now, going just once a year for the annual checkup, maybe good for some questions, but not for all questions, right? And just when we look at the quantified self-movement, or just when we take the example of a step counter, right? Like 20 years ago, or let's say 15 years ago, step counters have been something only tech geeks had, and it was like a gadget of the size, actually, right?
Yes.
Now you have step counters.
You'd wear it on your belt.
Yes, exactly. And now you have step counters all over. And not only that, they even see what kind of movements you are doing, right? And that's really exciting. And today it's a no-brainer to have that. And then also speaking about the new generation, right? Just like the people born after 2000, right? Also quite different mindset. And also, I think, more interest in engaging more actively, also electronically, with these type of questions. I think important is ultimately that you have information, insights about your body, which are actionable, right? Because if it just comes down to you're doing fine or stop drinking, it's not really meaningful, because these are, let's say commonplaces which are not really on a personalized level insightful. But when I get access to personalized information, where I can really understand, is it my lack of sleep, is it the type of diet I have, which may cause one or the other, let's say, situation or condition, then I think it's much more valuable. And then you're also more intrigued to do this perhaps quarterly, or if you are in high-end sports, you may even do it monthly or weekly, right? Depending. And this is all triggered by affordability. Because if I have to pay right now hundreds of dollars for a test, then I don't do it just for fun, typically not, right? But if you have just, let's say, just to have to pay 10x less, then you may just give it a shot. And if you like it, you just stick to it.
Absolutely. I think the biggest challenge as well from a consumer as well, having just turned 40 and starting to take my health very, very seriously as I get older, I find there are too many moving parts. You know, if I want my blood glucose, I may have to get the Freestyle Libre. I may have to buy the Aura Ring, the Whoop Band, the Garmin watch. You know, I'm a walking piece of technology. Wouldn't it be amazing to have something where you've got instant data, or I have to maybe go to a Medichecks, or get the phlebotomist to come out, take my blood, go away, send back the results.
But you will always, you will always need the phlebotomist. I think that's important to state. Like, we will also need the phlebotomist because of venous blood. Because only venous blood gives you the systemic information. Finger prick blood is only of limited use, and that's why we don't want to go there. So we have standardized all our methods basically on venous blood. We can take plasma or serum, and that's really important, because then if you have bold claims, then people may come up, oh, sounds too good to be true, or sounds like Theranos. And to be honest, let's say Theranos, they had real technology, but they had the wrong sample types. And they did a couple of other mistakes, which I don't want to dwell on in this context. But scientifically, the killer was to use finger prick blood. Capillary blood doesn't make sense at all. It doesn't tell you much about your body, at least not on a systemic level. And that's why you also may not have really any solutions which can give you your LDL cholesterol level. Because if you can do LDL, then the market is wide open. If you cannot do LDL, then you're just another company which tries to get LDL, but you don't have it. And that's why there are some, let's say, limiting points. But then, so basically, from a Lifespin perspective, we will always stick to systemic information using venous blood, looking at questions about general well-being and disease. What's also important is, if you do a test, it's not always about to measure how sick am I. It can be also how healthy am I, right? Because this thinking needs to be two ways, because there are different levels of health and well-being. Today, I hope I'm healthy, but I could do better. I could do also worse. It's really about more measuring where you are, just like if you go on a weight scale, right? But then, so there's this use case. So basically, our tool will enable deeper insights. We will always need a central lab because of our instrumentation, but the access is important. And access means you need to have a convenient system how to schedule appointments, how to find a phlebotomist next door. And if it takes 1 or 2 days to get the results on your iPhone, it's not a big deal. I think people can handle that. It's more a matter of having the workflow in a convenient fashion. But on the other hand, so that's one field in healthcare. On the other hand, actually, is point of care. So I spent more than 10 years in point of care. And point of care is extremely important, as we have seen during the pandemic, because it really enables the society to still remain functional and to mitigate risk. And here I think it's just important to look at the right use cases for point of care, because on one hand, you think of point of care sitting in people's homes, which is one possibility. To be honest, I'm a bit skeptical about that, because if you do your own finger prick, it's a very messy exercise, and then you may question yourself, is it good enough, or did the blood clot already? Can I really use this result? And that's why what I think is best is to use point of care in a physician office setting, because I think it's really about how can I use technology to make the physician's life easier and the nurse practitioner's life easier, that they can do even a better quality service to the patients. And so basically, when I look at it from a Fluxology perspective, Fluxology, I think is a great company because we have a point of care platform. It's a platform technology which is multimodal. So basically, we have the ability to do PCR, so we can basically detect nucleic acid-based biomarkers. It does immunoassays. We can detect basically any sort of immunoassay, let's say, related markers, which may be protein-based, but not necessarily. Could be any other markers where we have antibodies. But then now comes the most exciting part, I think. We can also do cell counting. And cell counting at the point of care in combination with nucleic acid detection and/or immunoassay is one of the big hot topics in point of care. And we have great progress here. And so the team is working hard and quite effectively on the questions of how can I combine cell counting, PCR, and immunoassays in one box. And the box has the size of an espresso machine, basically. So it's decently sized. You can put it in any physician lab.
Yes.
And it's based on microfluidics. Obviously, it has microfluidics cartridges, which are also let's say very cost effectively manufactured. And that's also pretty cool about Fluxology is that it's a startup with its own factory. So when you go to Irvine and visit the Fluxology facilities, you see a pretty cool state-of-the-art manufacturing building, also inspired by Kingston Technologies, using this semiconductor manufacturing philosophy, take it into point of care. Because like what I've seen at Sony and HP are great manufacturing companies, obviously. And what I've seen at Sony working with many startup companies is that startup companies have great minds to really create new technologies. But then the big question is, how can I scale it that I can turn it into a product which people can really purchase? So, and especially healthcare, it's a very cost-constrained market. On one hand, healthcare is a money sink because it's so expensive. Like in the US, it's eating 20% of GDP goes to healthcare expenses. And I think it's still the best healthcare system in the US. And so just to state that, but it's also very expensive, but very efficient, I think. But on the other hand, it's not affordable for the entire population, unfortunately, and it's also not affordable in many countries. So basically, we need healthcare solutions which are scalable, and that's why when I look at new technologies, I always think, putting on my Sony and HP alumni hat, how can I make this scalable and affordable so that people can really buy it? And that's really important, because when I have a cancer test for $10,000 or $5,000, I may use it, but typically people use it when it's already too late. In the sense of too late to be very effective with treatment, that you can just improve overall well-being of the patient.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And is it too soon to talk about the long-term goals of Lifespin as well, where it ultimately ends, or a place that you ultimately get to?
Well, I hope it never ends. And so we are just starting a fun journey.
Yes.
And so the beginning is very straightforward: R&D pharma services, and the end goal, I think, or the end game is could be following. You could think of a consumerized test, which you get as a consumer. You get then on your phone the result shared in terms of the overall well-being on an organ level. And then if something pops up, basically you may have some issues with your liver, let's say, then you could trigger as an in-app purchase the next step, which is basically to use another software algorithm to look for liver-specific conditions. If this still flashes that something is wrong, then you may get another in-app purchase for an actual diagnostics for suspected liver diseases. And now we are working on the foundation of that, but this will be our end game, because basically a digital product, but based on actual blood draw. So it's a real thing, and everything we measure is real. You can also just do a one-to-one benchmarking with a central lab, Our difference is just that we are 100 times more efficient than the central lab. So when the central lab gives you for standard blood, let's say blood work, let's say 10 or 20 parameters, we can get hundreds of parameters. So that's the main difference. So because of that, we just see holistically more. And so the end game would be basically to have this portfolio of products ranging from none or lightly regulated consumer to FDA regulated or the European counterpart, IVDR regulated diagnostic tools in a continuous or let's say seamless workflow experience, because you would basically just buy another algorithm to look for the very same blood sample.
That's wonderful. And with your hindsight now, looking back, I had a question here that I wanted to ask about being a leader in technology, having come from the larger organizations and now implemented in startup as well. How does a leader stay a leader using technology? And I guess I'm trying to get into the mind of somebody now who's
and first of all, everything is always exciting, right? Like we all in the tech space, we find everything is kind of super exciting. So the question, or first goal is to be less excited in the center of you need focus. And when you need focus, you means, so when you need focus, that means you need to make some decisions about things you may don't, let's say, like you may not want to do. And so basically it's really about looking which are really the use cases, which are meaningful, which create value. And to me, insight is not necessarily value if it's not actionable. So basically you want to look at use cases which create actionable insights. And here needs, I think, discipline to basically make the right choices and also not to get defocused. And second, basically, is also no one really understands necessarily if you go to the market. Let's say that the customers may not deeply understand the technology. So it's very important to make it explainable, to explain in a really in layman terms how it works, because I think it's very important to be transparent and to explain in detail how something works. And that's why I think emphasis on looking at questions which are important and then explaining these in a transparent fashion is very important. And so when I, for example, look at what Lifespin is doing, I could explain it in a way that 5-year-olds could understand it. And I think that's a great test to see if a technology is great or not. You just explain a child if it's meaningful or not. And then if they say it's meaningful, then it is meaningful, because they are not so abstracted like adults. They think of many different things, and kids have a much better mindset, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the theme of 5-year-olds and the new generations coming through, what do you see the challenges of attracting the right sort of people into your organization as you continue to grow, and that balance of knowledge in the business through experience and that exciting new mindset of a 20-year-old? Do you see any challenges so far, or?
Not fundamentally. I think on one end there's a typical difference in thinking across different generations, which I think is healthy and natural. I think even the ancient Greeks under Socrates complained about the new generation. I think that's baloney, because each generation has a different mindset, which is legitimate because of its own reasons. I think at the end of the day, it's really about the individual culture. And so to me, it's really important if someone is graduating from a top university or not. I think the mindset is important, and because we are looking here into industries and let's say which are just being created. So basically, you don't have to go to an expert for anything. So basically, you need to be let's say it's like you need to embrace the uncertainty, because you don't really know where you're, let's say, getting into in the sense of maybe what are the best say product embodiments, what are useful products, what not. But ultimately, it's important to have a team which has deep understanding of the technology, including the leadership. I think it's very important that leaders also understand what they're actually doing in the sense of what's really underneath this technology. and then basically be open about outcome. But most important is following. Sometimes certain things may not go right, and then it's extremely important to be loyal and to stick to the entire team, because let's say these things, let's say in most cases things have some surprises, and then it's just important to deal with these surprises in a loyal fashion, that you basically see it as part of the journey. Like when you develop a new product, I would be really skeptical if someone would really stick to the MS project timelines.
Yes.
To be quite dubious, to be honest, and that's why it's just important to understand the operational process of product development and understand the operational process of marketing, commercializing a product. And if you don't have this operational insight, then you just don't have the right context to do it. And it's really important to listen to the team. I, for example, bi-weekly meetings with the sub teams in my company, because it's just important. And this is just a forum to voice out any open things which may not be articulated, or where people may prefer just to share this in a conversation. And that's really important to be really well connected to each and everyone.
That's really insightful. Absolutely. And what are your plans? Just wrapping up the podcast here. What are your plans now for travel, forums, conferences, events? Can anybody catch up with you in person, or?
Yeah. Well, I've actually I think more than 10 events also until November. So this will be starting mid-September in Basel, Switzerland.
Yes.
Quite busy time. I'm actually quite excited to go to Israel. I have a keynote lecture at Tel Aviv University.
Wonderful.
About digital healthcare. This is in October. So it's an IEEE event. I'm very excited about that. I think it's a great country, and I think it's the best and most modern healthcare system in the world. So I'm excited about this journey. Also, we'll combine it with a couple of business meetings, obviously. And and people can look up on our website, lifespin.health, under the news or event section, the events we are attending, and then happy to chat in person. And then obviously also LinkedIn, so you can find me easily, and then happy to connect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting that you're heading over to Israel. I've seen a lot of development over the years in the semiconductor industry, the high tech industries, and and now in healthcare, how really solid they are.
And since my HP Tech Venture times, I mean, I've great connections to Israel, and I think it's a great ecosystem.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure I share this podcast with as many people as I possibly can. And I feel like, and I knew it would go very, very fast. So, because we've got so much to talk about, but perhaps we can pencil in a follow-up towards the winter when it's a little bit darker outside. We could catch up.
Happy to do that.
And I'll look forward to many more conversations with you. Ali, thanks so much for being a guest here. I'll sign off for now. I'm looking forward to speaking to you very soon.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you, Ali.